Hello, my name is Antonio Valente. For 25 years, I've been working in financial services as a trusted resource to help individuals, families, and companies create and protect their legacy. Most people think being a financial advisor is about stocks and bonds, but these are just tools in our toolbox. It's been my experience that most successful people are driven by living a life that pursues legacy. And that is the secret ingredient in creating a legacy. So gear up because we're about to climb the Legacy Summit. Friends, thanks for tuning in. This is episode 3 of the Legacy Summit. And as a reminder for our first-time viewers, though I'm a financial advisor based in Dallas, Texas, servicing clients across the country, this show is not about investing. It's not about money. It's about living a life of purpose and my conversations with individuals and organizations that are legacy-driven. Now, if you're like me and you like baseball, you know that when the game is on the line in the 8th or 9th inning, you got to bring on a closer to save the game. The pressure and focus that these pitchers face is remarkable. And what's even wilder is that they never really know whether they're going to be needed or not during each game. So basically, they just need to be dialed in and ready to go if called upon. Well, in the world of international diplomacy, the stakes are at its very highest. It's not a game, it's a life, and that's at the center stage. And our next guest has a distinguished public service career spanning over 30 years and has frequently been called upon to make the big save. So who do we have with us today? From the beautiful land of enchantment, former governor of New Mexico, Bill Richardson. Governor, welcome to the Legacy Summit. So great to have you with us today. It's our honor, sir. It's our honor.
Well, thank you, Antonio. This is a great idea, Legacy Summit. I think that's what every human being wants to leave a good legacy. And I am ready to answer any question. I will say, as a baseball fan, when I was playing, there weren't that many closers. The great pitchers like Nolan Ryan in your state now in Texas, they'd go 9 innings, they'd go 10 innings. They didn't have too many closers. Well, they did. Now you've got about 3 closers. A major league pitcher will go 6 innings, then they'll have 3 closers. Things have changed. But anyway, I'm dwelling in the past, but commend you for your very nice opening statement.
Thank you, Bill. You're right. They have pitch count now. They didn't have that before. Hey, Bill, you got to give me a minute because it might take 2 minutes, but I want to share some of your highlights of your street cred with our guests here, okay? So as I said earlier, you've got a distinguished public service career, U.S. Congressman, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Secretary of Energy under the Clinton administration. As a diplomat and special envoy, you received 4 Nobel Peace Prize nominations. You've successfully won the release of hostages and American servicemen in North Korea, Cuba, Iraq, the Sudan. And since entering private citizen life in 2011, you've authored 3 books, including How to Sweet Talk a Shark, which I'm holding up right here. And I love this book. And by the way, if you don't have this book, folks, you need to go out and get it because it will help you. Okay, will help you resolve conflict, whether it's in your professional life or even in your personal life. It's a fantastic read. But Bill, you've been on the national and international speech circuit. You're on CNN, Fox. I have the honor now of saying on the Legacy Summit, right, with Antonio Valente as well. Give me another minute because there's 2 more things I want to say. Obviously, I live part-time in Santa Fe. And as governor of New Mexico, you really just did an amazing job for the citizens there, right? I'm talking clean energy, education, transportation, healthcare. You were nominated as the best education governor by the National Education Administration in 2010. You put $1 billion back into public schools and helping teachers get fair pay for the amazing work they do. Frankly, Bill, few can few people can match the wide range of experience and dedication that you have demonstrated protecting and improving human rights, quality of life, people in New Mexico, the United States, and frankly, around the world. Like I said, Bill, it's just an honor to have you here today.
Well, Antonio, I love your introduction. My God, I mean, I should just quit and stop with all this, but I'm delighted to be with you. I just, the only thing that I want to say is, I try, because of this hostage issues I'm involved in, Russia, others, I don't do a lot of these interviews, but I liked you. You actually grassroots at a local restaurant in Santa Fe came up to me, said hello,
Yep.
and told me about the podcast. And you've got a lot of charisma yourself. And how could I say no? But not that I'm trying to be exclusive with the media, but
Yep.
I'm very glad to do this with you. I also have to earn a living, so I want to hear sometime about your good investments, especially in clean energy. I have my foundation, which works on hostages, environmental issue, Native Americans, but I'm on boards, clean energy boards, because I still have to make a living, which I'm not complaining. I'm doing okay. I'm in Santa Fe, so I'm sorry to interject that.
No. Listen, I appreciate that. I really do. And we're going to talk about some of those things. And we want folks to know about those foundations. They're so important. They're life-changing. And we want to help to get the word out about the amazing work that those foundations truly are doing. So Bill, let me just ask you the first question. I'm thinking back to '82. What set you on the path to go down, the path to go into Congress? What was your calling there?
Well, my calling was this, and I'm very honest about it. I was a mediocre student at Tufts University. I learned Spanish, English, a little French, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. I was a pitcher, but then my elbow went dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I can't be a baseball player. What am I going to do? And I took a trip to Washington, D.C., and heard a number of senators talk and saw the political process. And I said, well, I want to be a politician. I want to run for office. I think I'm good with people. And so in New Mexico, I ran for office the first time in 1980, and nobody gave me a chance. I lost, but barely. But it set me up for running for Congress in 1982 in a new congressional district that included Santa Fe. And I was known for shaking hands, grassroots, going to rallies, going to homes, door to door, telephone calls, a lot of travel. And that elected me to Congress with a very narrow majority in 1982. But I knew once I set foot in Congress, foreign policy, energy issues, grassroots, healthcare issues were my interests. So I lost my first race. And one of the messages I give to young people that say, well, I want to get into public service politics, is you say, you may lose your first one. It's how you bounce back that makes a difference. And I think that may be the case in your profession too.
It absolutely
you lose some money, but then you would reinvest and keep chugging away, learn more, and maybe you succeed, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and you were in Congress for 14 years, and I would say, a skill on Wall Street is to be adaptable to change. And I'm going to say that has to be the same thing in public office, right? I'm talking 14 years just in Congress. We'll talk about in a minute here when you were Secretary of Energy, et cetera. But the world changed a lot over those 14 years. You were successful to adapt to the change.
Well, yeah, because I went from a very strong Democratic majority, Tip O'Neill, Tom Foley as speakers. And then in the late 80s, Newt Gingrich and the Republicans took over the Congress, took over the House. So you had to adapt. Being a subcommittee chairman, I was on Native American Affairs, to being a backbencher with no power because the Republicans had taken over. And that was the change in which bipartisanship, Antonio, started dying. In other words, we used to get along in the old days, Republicans and Democrats, we'd work out budgets, debt limits, all these other issues, national security. But now, what was ushered in was the politics of, I'll call it non-bipartisanship, intense rivalries on the Democratic side with our left and Republicans with their far right. And it's at a point now where I'm kind of happy I'm not in the Congress, but still in the international political arena. But yes, you have to adapt, you have to adjust, you have to change, you have to embrace change and deal with it.
Well, one of the many things I've learned just from being a friend of yours and in your books is it's all about the dialogue, right? Like nothing is ever going to get done unless folks get to the table and have those conversations. They're so critically important. And hopefully with conversations, we find common ground in there.
That's right, Antonio. And you know, one of the things I try to emphasize and do is, first of all, where I'm not good is in technology. I'm not a techie. Yes, I have an iPhone, iPad, you know, the little stuff, but I communicate with foreign leaders, with others, one to one, person to person. You go see them, you go talk to them, you build a personal connection. And I think that is important. I think the world has gotten, and you got to embrace technology. I'm not criticizing it. But then I think in some areas, even interpersonal relations, you have to deal one-on-one with your adversary, with your partner, with your friend, with your enemy.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. I'm not a big, I send emails, obviously, and texts, and,
Sure.
but I just think you got to have that personal connection in order to achieve something, whether it's in your business,
Right.
whether it's, you have to build trust, whether it's in diplomacy or politics.
Yeah. Yeah. Bill, I want to transition. I want to talk a little bit about the times when you were ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, right? So in '97, you're called upon by President Bill Clinton to serve as the U.S. ambassador to the UN. I was just trying to think, I remember the times well, but when you took that role, was there a role model that you kind of looked to before like executing that position?
Yes, it's a man by the name of Ralph Bunche. He was an African American diplomat, maybe 20 years before I took over at the UN in the late 90s, where he concentrated Bunche on Africa, Asia, Latin America, peacekeeping issues, conflicts, low-level conflicts. And so he was like he wasn't a mentor. I didn't know because he had long passed away. But I modeled myself. I always liked, Antonio, the United Nations. I always liked the fact that multilateral goals, the best thing for the United States is to build international support for our cause. And I thought at the UN, even though it's many times inefficient, sometimes ineffective, you've got close to 200 countries, you can dialogue. I used to have these talks with not 200 ambassadors, but you know, and the U.S. being a superpower, being the biggest contributor to the United Nations, you're a major player there.
Absolutely.
So that was a transformation going into the UN.
Bill, I'm thinking about the times there, and I mean, you've said about having these dialogues, and you know, in one of your books, I'm you know, reading through and thinking about the times, and even looking at photos. You and Eric Schmidt, you know, the former CEO of Google, and you all are out in North Korea doing a tour, and these times are, I mean, they're just simply remarkable. But I want to take a step back. I mean, you've had face-to-face conversations with some of the toughest people on the planet, right? I mean, I'm talking Castro, Saddam, the Taliban, 2 generations of North Korean leaders. You were involved in situations in the Sudan and the Congo. And I just got to ask you, what's it like going into a hot territory? You know, so you're sitting face to face with some of the world's most dangerous folks, and there's not really an eject button. You're going in there to diffuse a situation or to go help somebody. What happens? I mean, does it ever cross your mind, like, well, what happens if something goes wrong? Who's coming to get Bill?
Well, we've had a good record, but sometimes things don't work out. What do you try to do? Well, sometimes when I negotiate as a government official, is different than when I'm negotiating now that I'm not a government official. So you don't have much to offer. When you're in government, there's something the U.S. government wants in return for discussion with the bad guy. But right now, in my discussions with the Russians on Brittany Griner, on Trevor Reed, these are Americans that recently came out. One, Taylor Dudley, that we got out about a week ago in the border of Russia and Poland, is you have to you have to work very closely with the government. Which, for instance, prisoner exchanges. I have no authority there, and I think President Biden did a good job with the prisoner exchanges with Griner and Trevor Reed. I wish we'd gotten the Marine back.
You're still working on that. You're still working on it.
Yeah, we're working on it. We're working on that. But I think, Antonio, I'm talking too much. When you deal with a foreign leader that is not friendly to the U.S., one, you have to build a personal rapport. Mm-hmm. You got to even throw a little joke in there and a little humor. Third, you've got to respect their culture. The fact that you're meeting with that person, they're interested in talking to you because they know the U.S. is very important. And in previous cases, I've had relationships with these individuals, like Castro when I was a congressman. We got some prisoners out. With Saddam Hussein, I didn't know him until I went there. Yeah. And by the way, I made a major mistake there at the start of the meeting. I showed him the sole of my shoe, which is a supreme insult to an Arab. and he walked out of the meeting. And I said, oh my God, I'm done. But he came back and, he wanted me to apologize. And I didn't. I just was respectful. And I think I won't say he liked that.
Yeah.
But it depends, North Korea is different from Russia. It's different from Iran. It's different from Venezuela. It's cultural. With Latins, what helped me is I speak Spanish. Because I was partially raised in Mexico. Yeah. And with Castro, with the Venezuelans, with others, it's one-on-one. And you mentioned baseball. You're a baseball fan. Castro was a big baseball fan. Yeah. And I remember talking to him and going to a game. And I came back from the game in Havana and I said, Mr. President, I noticed your hitting is great, but the score 12-10, it means that some of your pitching is not going too well. And he got mad. He didn't like it. Really? He said, no, you're misinformed. He said, you're basically a dummy. But we established sort of a connection. Yeah. And I did succeed. And then another time in Cuba, I made a major mistake because I thought I had a prisoner out. And instead of shutting up after that negotiation failed, the press was right outside our hotel. And as a politician, instead of shutting up and continue, I couldn't resist. And I denounced the Cubans. They kept me in purgatory for about 10 years. We now have a program with my foundation there, but you make mistakes too.
Yeah.
When you're tired, when you're emotional. And sure. That was the time in Cuba.
Well, but like what I love about this, you're so authentic, Bill, and like, in these situations, I remember we talked about the time in North Korea and then you found out like 2 servicemen, were there and they were shot down and you were there for something else. And then you immediately changed. You just immediately pivoted and your whole focus was you're not leaving the country without those boys. And that's right. That's an incredible honor.
Well, we got them back. Unfortunately, one perished, but we got them back. But I remember arriving in North Korea and the news was out that the 2 Americans had been shot down, 2 American pilots. And I remember getting to my hotel and the Secretary of State, Warren Christopher, calling me and saying, you stay there until you get those 2 out. And I said, yes, I will. And I stayed there. I think it was 2.5 weeks. Yeah. I think one of the reasons I got them out is the North Koreans were sick of me meeting with them. But they isolated me. They put me in this special room, and for days nobody had come see me. I mean, they gave me food. I wasn't a prisoner, but psychologically they were trying to, imbalance me. And when they realized that I wasn't going to leave, that's when we started negotiating. That was my first big negotiation in the late 80s. And then it happened with Saddam Hussein. We started doing more North Korea, Cuba, and it kind of was a domino effect that I did and continue to do now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right, folks, we're going to do this. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation with Bill Richardson and his legacy. We're going to talk about the time when he was Secretary of Energy, the time when he was governor of New Mexico, and a little bit more about his foundation. So please stick around at the Legacy Summit. We'll be right back in just a minute.
Experience. It makes all the difference. The Penn Valente Group has decades of experience in navigating clients through various market cycles since the early 1980s. We have the experience investors need to help make the right decisions when it matters most. We invest our time in building strong relationships with our clients. This leads to better outcomes for our clients. Investing for the long run is the right advice, but it ignores basic human nature. The fear and greed cycle leads investors to buy high and sell low. We help our clients become informed investors by maintaining the highest standard of care with consistent communication regardless of the market's direction. We act as the voice of reason with realistic expectations for how markets actually behave. Over shorter periods, market returns have a very wide range of results. Over longer time periods, outcomes tend to center around long-term averages. History matters. We don't panic during times of market stress. Big drawdowns in the stock market have been a common occurrence, and we understand that's typically when our clients need us most, and the manifestation of our work together will likely be most evident. We prefer preparation over panic and understand that though diversification is key, it is also hard. Why? Because true diversification means holding underperforming assets. If everything is working, it means your portfolio is not actually diversified. With the knowledge of behavioral biases such as loss aversion, we understand that losses are more painful than gains are pleasing. The math behind diversification makes sense, but its psychology can be troubling. Experience. It makes all the difference. And that's peace of mind for our clients when it matters most. Give us a call at 214-373-2925 or find us online at pennvalentegroup.com. Let's see how our experience can help you better achieve your goals and enhance your family legacy.
Okay, friends, we are back. Thanks for sticking around for part 2 of the Legacy Summit. We're here with my good friend, Governor Bill Richardson, and we've been talking about Bill's incredible legacy in public service as a member of Congress, ambassador to the UN, and how effective Bill has been in negotiating on behalf of the United States on the international stage. And Bill, I want to transition. I want to talk a little bit about your time at this as Secretary of Energy, because obviously energy independence is so important, but so is the future, right? I mean, I'm thinking about the difficulty it was and is to balance the current needs of the United States on the energy forefront for the current population and also the future population. Can you share some stories from your time as Secretary of Energy?
Well, the first story I will tell you is I loved my job at the United Nations. And I remember getting a call from President Clinton. My wife and I were at the Waldorf, loved the job. And President Clinton says, I'm going to move you as the Secretary of Energy. And I said, why? I'm very happy where I am. He said, well, Federico Pena, a very good Secretary of Energy, is leaving. And I need a Hispanic there. And you do know something about energy. I said, well, but I'm happy here. No, you're my friend and I want you in Washington. So that's how I got the job. In those days, Antonio, clean energy was just starting. In other words, the need for clean energy, for solar and wind and vehicles. And we started pushing that, but mainly the job at the time of Secretary of Energy was managing our national laboratories, Sandia, Los Alamos, where they just discovered this great nuclear fusion, research, energy research, weapons. But I I did a lot as secretary with Russia, which helped me in some of these hostage negotiations. We had an agreement with the Russians to exchange nuclear scientists. We had an agreement with the Russians on uranium on their Russian Navy ships. So I was going back and forth to Russia, and I had been at the United Nations. My counterpart ambassador was Sergei Lavrov, who is now the foreign minister of Russia. So I spent a lot of time on international issues as Secretary of Energy, some of it going to OPEC countries and trying to persuade them to increase production so the price wouldn't be so high. And in those days, you talk about adapting. The price, everyone thought when it went to $25 a barrel that was too much.
Right.
Now it's nothing. Now, anyway, so the big challenge today is the transition to renewable energy from fossil fuels. I think natural gas is a bridge to that, but there has to be a balance.
Right.
In my state, Antonio, you know this.
Yeah.
48% of the state budget comes from oil and gas revenues.
Right.
So you can't exactly say, well, we're going to stop doing that,
Right.
because it funds our schools, it funds our healthcare, it funds our education programs. But we have a very good climate change strategy in New Mexico. We have a good governor on that. And I think nationally, President Biden is moving in the right direction with moving us to this transition to recognizing the importance of dealing with climate change, which all you have to do is see what's happening in California.
Absolutely.
On a daily basis, wildfires, floods, just everywhere.
Yeah.
Heat waves, storms. This is climate change.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's happening, right? It's happening now. Yeah.
It's happening. It's happening intensively. So we have to be realistic in having a balanced policy that recognizes jobs. I mean, there are a lot of jobs that you can't just say are going to disappear by moving immediately to green energy. There has to be a transition. But if we have to favor anything, it should be green energy, solar, wind, biomass, just hydrogen. I think we got to start technologically, and technology is where I think this is a great asset to the current energy debate. More technology, new transmission lines, integrate the transmission lines. We have 3, they're separate in the United States. Find ways to transmit green energy more effectively. There's a lot of bureaucracy at the state and federal level that we have to overcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Bill, let's talk about the great state of New Mexico, right? Because in 2002, I'm going to say you kind of circled the wagons a little bit back to the land of enchantment, and it's less international focus, more domestic. What did you want to achieve as governor of New Mexico?
Well, the first thing, Antonio, is people ask me, you've had very interesting jobs. What was the best job you had? And I'll tell you clearly, governor of New Mexico, because I ran the show.
Yeah.
And I like power, but to do the right thing.
Yes.
And there were so many needs, still are in New Mexico, and you got to recognize the precious diversity in land and water and environment here, and then go from there. But I loved domestic politics, and I loved being able to set the agenda. And today, the state is fortunate because we have close to $3 billion more that come a lot from oil and gas to deal with some of the very, very needy social needs here in New Mexico. Native Americans, high poverty levels, low education statistics, the need to transition to a clean environment. Education is the key. So I enjoyed my role as governor, but I also thought, let's invest in the future. We invested on what is called a rail runner, a train that connects Albuquerque and Santa. The spaceport, people would laugh at me. Space tourism. We made a deal with Richard Branson. He's a tough negotiator. Talk about, he wanted the state to pay for the whole thing. I said, no, 50-50.
Right.
And we did. And I think it's an investment for the future.
Yeah.
Space tourism, the technology is working itself out. So we brought movies into New Mexico. We didn't have that. We needed more industry than tourism, oil and gas, national parks, military bases. So we created and we gave incentives to the movie companies.
Right.
In other words, I said to the movie companies, what do you need? And they said, well, we need the state to invest with you. Done. We need free state land. Done. What
Right.
else? Don't overdo it.
Yeah.
But we attracted a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I'm not taking full credit for it. It was Republican and my current governor's doing a lot too. So, but we established a new industry. So it's not perfect, Antonio. You know, Santa Fe and New Mexico, we need to do more, diversify, attract high tech. You know, tell all your investors to come in and invest in New Mexico in clean energy and technology.
You know, you've diversified the portfolio and the gem of, you know, Santa Fe and truly of all of New Mexico. You know, I know you're loved by New Mexicans everywhere. And here's how I know this, is that regardless of whenever or wherever we are, there's a queue of people that are coming up to you asking for a photo op or thanking you for your service. I mean, we could barely ever finish a meal, you know, together. So you were so effective, I think, in reaching the hearts of the people. Bill, let's talk just a minute on the humanitarian efforts. I mean, well, that's the first thing. Like when I think of you and I think of your name, humanitarian is the first thing that really comes to me, right? Comes to my mind, right? You've got 4 Nobel Peace Prize nominations over your career. It's just a tremendous honor to be in the same paragraph as that word. I think about all these things. What do those nominations mean to you? How important are they to your legacy?
Well, they're important because, you know, this is not just the United States, this is worldwide. I think it's the most prestigious nomination in the world. I've never gotten the award, by the way. But at the same time, and by the way, you were so nice about in New Mexico, people come up, that is true, and say hello. But I can assure you there's some people that don't like me. I can assure you.
We can't please everybody ever, Bill. Let me tell you right now.
I know that, but just to be clear,
yes.
Sometimes I get phone calls after appearing on television that are not complimentary. But anyway, I just think you know, your legacy, and I know this is so important, especially with your program. I mean, I want to be known as somebody that made a difference. And we've made in our foundation, I think, a difference in bringing back American hostages from detentions that are not legal or not right, but also other Americans that are in prison. I mean, we don't have that big a staff, but the 4 of us work very hard on that. Secondly, we have part of our foundation protects refugees in Bangladesh. It's called the Rohingyas. We have programs that help. We also have wildlife protection, in which we try to protect elephants and wildlife in Africa. And Robert Redford and I we don't have it anymore, a foundation where we protected wild horses, and we made agreements with the Navajo Nation to not slaughter the wild horses. And then finally, we have a program now with the Navajo Nation where we work with Nike, and we give them tennis shoes, you know, to the kids, you know, little, not big, but so that's what I'm doing now. I still have some boards that I serve on, but that's, you want to leave a legacy. You want to see, oh, you know, it's like Ted Williams. You remember that quote he had? He said, you know what I want is when I retire, if I walk down the street, I want somebody to say that was the greatest hitter that ever lived. No, I don't want the greatest thing for me, but I want, you know, that Richardson, he's doing a good thing. I disagree with him on policy, but he's doing a good thing with the hostages. I get that.
Yeah.
I also hear, like Antonio with Griner, we helped on that.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
We give Biden and the administration most of the credit.
Yeah.
But some people come up to me and say, well, you know, the only thing is I wish you'd gotten the Marine out too. I said, okay, well, we're gonna, you know, it's like a grudging respect, which I cherish very much, that people, especially where we had lunch that day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Bill, I want to do some rapid fire questions here, okay? Because this is sort of fun and I'm enjoying this conversation, but I know your schedule is busy and I want to be sensitive to that. Bill, what's your superpower?
What's my superpower?
Yes, sir. What's your superpower?
You mean my personal or?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thinking about your career, you have so many different unique skill sets, and I know that you've got a superpower. What would you say is your superpower?
Well, I think I'm able to one-on-one to connect with people. I think that's the number one. Even though I may disagree with somebody, I have friends that are Trump supporters, that are MAGA supporters. And we stay away from the politics.
Yep.
You know what brings you together with many of these people is sports, baseball, football, movies, Elvis Presley. You know, I love the Elvis movie. And so anyway, so establishing a personal connection. I'm sorry I went on too long.
No. That's great. You know, when we first met, we were talking. I was telling you that my dad's favorite baseball player was Roger Maris, and you had asked me why. And my dad loved him. I lost my dad 2 years ago, but my dad loved Roger Maris's story because, you know, during that, you know, home run race with Mickey Mantle, he was sort of kind of hated. They didn't want Roger Maris to get that home run, and my dad loved the underdog story of Roger. So baseball's part of life.
So Antonio, where was Roger Maris born?
So I think
I asked you that.
Yeah, you did. So I know he was with Kansas
Fargo, North Dakota.
Okay, that's right. I know he started out with Kansas.
I think I said I loved Roger too, but I love Mickey Mantle more.
Yeah.
And I was rooting for Mickey to get the record, but Roger got it. You know.
What an amazing summer.
Oh my God, summer of '61.
Summer of '61. Hey, Bill, when you're forming a team and putting a team together, what are you looking for?
I'm looking for language skills. I'm looking for negotiating skills. I think diversity is very important. Experience. I'm looking for somebody that's willing to take a risk. You know, I like risk takers. I like people, and I had I think a good record of hiring people in New Mexico that weren't like me, that were able to say to me, Gov or Bill or Secretary, you're wrong. Now, it ticked me off sometimes when they said that. But I think you got to be able to have people that have contrary views and don't just be in a bubble like many policy people are, where they're not listening. They're so important. No, I don't like this criticism. No, get out. You're fired. No, you want to have people that disagree with you, but work with you and take risks and work hard. That's very important.
Yeah. Bill, I'm thinking about my world, right? So my world in investments, Wall Street, there's a kind of a rite of passage, I would say, and that rite of passage is sort of happening now. It's navigating clients through tough times, bear markets, what have you. When I think about your career, you know, in public service, regardless of the position, is there a rite of passage in the different stages that you had, like for somebody who wants to go down these channels?
Yeah, I think you have to know that sometimes what you're doing is going to not work out. Mm-hmm. And there's a defeat. You know, I lost my first race. Yeah. That the decision you made was not the right one. So what do you do about it? That maybe if you'd taken a risk earlier, it would have been better. One of the things I learned is if there's bad news in your life, or well, not necessarily in your life, but in politics or something you've done, get it out. Don't hold it back, because eventually they're going to find out.
Yeah.
The press will find out. Just deal with the bad stuff, but get it out and deal with it. Don't hold it back. Yeah. If there's good news, share the credit. Don't just take it yourself.
Yeah.
But especially when you make a mistake, acknowledge it, but don't hold it back. Eventually somebody will find out.
I love that, Bill. I love that. Bill, you know, I believe that iron sharpens iron and that successful people learn from others. Is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to in this podcast?
Well, yeah, although he's not going to be listening, President Clinton.
Yeah.
He gave me two good jobs.
Yeah,
And I don't see him that much. I'm in Santa Fe, he's in New York.
sure.
But if he's listening or any of his people are listening, he did a lot for me. To my wife, Barbara, she's stuck around with me for
She's
50
amazing.
years.
She's wonderful. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know. It's amazing that she's stuck around with me. So I would say those two, Barbara, President Clinton, there's so many others. The people in New Mexico, the people that come up to me and say, hey, good job on the hostages. Hey, we're proud of you.
Yeah.
Those are the shout outs. I don't know how you do all that, but and then good people like you that are taking the time. You've made my day. I have
Thank
all
you.
these accolades.
I'm just speaking the truth here, my friend. That's all I'm doing. I'm just speaking the truth. Bill, we're having a great conversation. I feel like I've asked you like 1,000 questions, but is there one question that I didn't ask that you wish I did ask? And if so, I'll ask it now.
No, you asked them all. I mean, you asked all the good ones, the good general ones. You don't want to get into the very specific ones, but the greatest satisfaction that I've had lately on my hostage issue is, for instance, we just got back from the Russian-Polish border, and we got a hostage out, a Navy veteran, and we took his mother. And as the young man was coming in through the border, I looked at the mother, a woman, a nice lady from Lansing, Michigan, and I could see her crying and looking at me and sort of, I'm very grateful for it. As the young man walked up and they embraced.
Yeah.
So, that makes everything worthwhile for me and what I'm doing now, which is mainly hostage stuff.
Yeah. Well, Bill, I mean, I hope at some point, and it's funny, I know you officially retired, but I don't feel like you've ever taken a day off, in all honesty. But I hope, I'm going to tell you this, is that I feel like the world needs another book from you. And I hope that this podcast tells the people what an amazing legacy that you are. I mean, it's an honor. It's an honor that you're here today, and it's truly my privilege to be able to call you a friend.
Thank you. Thank you, Antonio. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, folks, we are out of time here today. And again, my name is Antonio Valente. I'm a financial advisor here in Dallas, servicing clients across the country. If you'd like to be a guest on the Legacy Summit or need assistance with family wealth planning or your family or corporate legacy, please reach out to me and my team. We'd love to have that legacy conversation with you. Legacies are made and protected with intentionality and purpose. Thank you, and God bless.